$5,000 per month shy of being able to retire, check out the proof at accountproof.com. That's accountproof.com. The Money Press uses the new weekly options and market forces to create your very own growth and income printing press. Go to accountproof.com. That's accountproof.com. This involves no day trading and is very low stress. See for yourself at accountproof.com today.
Individual results may vary. There's no guarantee that past performance will be indicative of future results. Invest wisely.
Here is a savvy solution for that piece of property that you want to get rid of. Donate to Cars for Kids. Sean Hannity here. You know, with costs at an all-time high, you'll be very happy to hear that Cars for Kids Real Estate will take over all the taxes and the maintenance and insurance fees and provide a tax deduction for the full appraised value of your property. Now, time is running out to secure your 2022 tax deduction. Donate at carsforkidsrealestate.org. That's cars with a K.
Big pressure to push out former President Trump. Twitter bosses were obsessed with getting him off the social giant's platform. Plus, Republicans all in on investigating the role of President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden's shady international business dealings. Witness intimidation, we're told, could already be underway. And death threats now coming from members of that group we interviewed on Friday. Popular Virginia restaurant bar refused to serve them based on their faith. We'll get into it. Senator Lindsey Graham, here with me on the mez. Tammy Bruce, Clay Travis, the Faulkner Focus, top of the hour.
Thank you, Harris. In a moment there, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg apparently likes to fly private. He has flown on taxpayer-funded private jets at least 18 times since he's been in office. This according to flight tracking data reviewed by Fox News Digital. Buttigieg is an outspoken advocate of climate policies that call to curb carbon emissions and transition from fossil fuels to electric vehicles and renewable energy.
Well, maybe smooth sailing for Secretary Buttigieg, but not so much for commercial passengers. A shortage of jet fuel. So what's going to happen? Phil Keating has a story from Miami. Hi, Phil.
Good morning, Dana. Yeah, weather across the country is a big concern this weekend heading into the holidays for air travel. There's a big snowstorm out west marching east. And recently, days of thick fog, and that's caused this jet fuel supply reserve shortage at Orlando International Airport. That's the busiest airport in the state of Florida, one of the busiest nationwide. So if you're flying in, warned your flight could be impacted. We did check. There have been a few flights canceled and delayed already. Bad weather, fog in particular here, is being blamed for delaying the fuel supply ships making their way to Florida. Here's Orlando. Ops update: weather issues along the Gulf Coast had prevented reserve supply delivery of jet fuel at MCO. The weather has lifted and ships have departed. If flight disruptions occur, airline contingency plans are currently in place. Thank you for your patience. Delta on inbound to Orlando flights have been told to top off their planes before arriving due to that fuel shortage. United Airlines also tweeted that some of its Orlando inbound and outbound flights would be adding extra stops at other airports to fill up their tanks. And last night at Boston's Logan International, a travel nightmare, hundreds sat in their seats on the tarmac, going nowhere for up to 6 hours. The culprit there: delays in the de-icing. Time of year, bad weather, cold.
Yeah.
Check your flight details before you leave
And a
home.
lot of fuel get wasted along. Indeed. All right, Phil, thank you.
So NASA's Artemis 1 Orion spacecraft splashing down right on time yesterday, Pacific Ocean off the coast of Southern California. Successful ending to a 25-day test flight around the back, no people on board. Artemis aims to set up a lunar base for missions to Mars. Its next flight around the moon with astronauts targeted for 2024, and former NASA astronaut Mike Massa. This stuff, nice to see you, sir. Good day to you. So this sucker went 268,000 miles from Earth.
Farther than any spacecraft that's rated to carry people has ever gone. A lot further than when they went. Actually, they landed on the moon. Yesterday, the spacewalk 50 years ago today was the last voyage we had with people on the moon. This spacecraft went even further, went through a big orbit around the moon to get all the tests they wanted to accomplish.
The moon.
Yeah, went a big orbit, about 40,000 mile orbit, and then came back here to Earth and landed yesterday.
And did they get the information they were seeking?
back from Orion the last few weeks. It entered successfully, had an interesting profile coming in, because coming in really fast, 25,000 miles an hour, 5,000 degrees. They did a little bounce. We actually slowed it down like skipping a rock on the water, sort of. It did a little bounce, and that way it kind of slowed down a little bit, so it reduced the heat load on the vehicle. That all worked really well. Now they've got to go inside and look on the outside as well. It had an ablative heat shield. The came back fine, but they're going to look and make sure that heat shield looks good. Also, inside the spacecraft, you don't want to, once you get the astronauts back, you don't want to move around too much or overheat them, so they're going to look at how the cooling worked inside, how the spacecraft performed on its journey, protecting whoever would be inside of it from radiation and other factors that they're looking at. So they're gonna decipher this stuff over the next couple months. But it looks good so far. Everything indicates that it went really
they're
well.
going to take an Orion ship to the moon.
Yeah.
Then they're going to disembark on an Elon Musk SpaceX project.
Yeah, that's Artemis 3.
And then
yeah.
land on the moon.
Yeah, that's the third. So the first one was what we just saw, nobody on board. You described it in your piece leading up to this here. They're going to have astronauts on board, 4 of them. And they're going to do somewhat of a repeat, not as long, of what they just did with Artemis. They should be able to handle that. That should work. As long as the spacecraft look good, they can train people up and do that. Artemis 3, though, is that's a whole different ballgame, because that involves, as you mentioned, Elon Musk and SpaceX, because they have to launch the lander, and in addition to that, they're launching like a gas station, more or less, having trouble getting fuel for airplanes, but they're going to put a fueling station in orbit so that when they launch, they can get fuel and then go to the moon with it. So that's a big step. So Artemis 3, a lot of that stuff has to happen before they can put people on the moon.
Great stuff. You come back soon, okay?
You bet.
Were you in Maine over the weekend?
I was in Houston at the astronaut reunion.
Okay. Well,
what's going on?
We asked. Dana's got something special.
What do you got?
Before we go,
Yeah.
he thought you were down at this event, Mike, because you like to wear a uniform. There we go.
What is this?
Santa's heading down the slope. This is
Oh.
in Maine to support a local nonprofit there, and they certainly had a great time. They had some good snow.
Well, I like skiing, but they look like better skiers than me, even with that Santa.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. They're both. Here's Harris.
Fox News alert. Before Elon Musk bought Twitter, it was an unmitigated mess and filled with people apparently who were willing to target Americans, and it went all the way to the top. The latest revelations expose executives having conversations about changing the platform to go after one single person, Donald J. Trump. Faulkner, you were in the Faulkner Focus. Journalist Michael Schellenberger has released the latest information coming from the Elon Musk-driven investigation of former Twitter employees' discriminating behaviors. We now are learning Twitter execs worked behind the scenes to further restrict speech and lay the foundation permanently to ban President Trump. They crafted a system giving users 5 strikes. Trump's account was gone the very next day. The only example of any pushback that we can find or Schellenberger has his hands on at the old Twitter came on a lower-level in-house messaging board. Here's a quote from that board. This might be an unpopular opinion, but one-off and ad hoc decisions like this that don't appear rooted in policy are a slippery slope. This now appears to be a fiat by an online platform CEO with a global presence that can gatekeep speech for the entire world, which seems unsustainable. Well, that person was right. Really, if anyone is still wondering where Twitter falls on the political spectrum, here's a peek into the employee donations. A breakdown. 2018, more than 96% of employees who work for Twitter donated to Democrats and their cause. 2022, 99%. Interesting, it was going up to nearly everybody. Employees Republicans based on those percentages and numbers, or conservative causes. Lawmaker admits Twitter's moves were not okay.
It is wrong to censor newspapers. It is wrong to censor journalists. I'm open to hearings in Congress on this. Look, there are two competing values. On the one hand, we don't want censorship. We don't want to have people censored or boxed out, shadow boxed, and removed from Twitter because of their viewpoint. On the other hand, we do want respect. I mean, we don't want accounts that are filled with anti-Semitism or just spewing racism or hate on these accounts.
Mike Emanuel live in our nation's capital. Mike.
Harris, good morning. Among the revelations, the behind the scenes of what led to then President Trump being banned by Twitter. Journalist Michael Schellenberger tweeting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Roth DMs his colleagues with news that he's excited to share. Guess what, he writes? Jack just approved repeat offender for civic integrity. The new approach would create a system where 5 violations, strikes, would result in permanent suspension. Role is Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety. Jack is former CEO Jack Dorsey. Schellenberger says there was a push inside the social media giant coming from Twitter's progressive staff. And a method for removal came with a new policy. Quote, around noon, a confused senior executive sales sends a DM to Roth, sales exec. Jack says we will permanently suspend Trump if our policies are violated after a 12-hour account lock. What policies is Jack talking about? Roth, any policy violation. There was also external pressure on Twitter from a variety of progressive voices, from former First Lady Michelle Obama, who wrote, quote, now is the time for Silicon Valley companies to stop enabling this monstrous behavior and go even further than they have already by permanently banning this man from their platforms and putting in place policies to prevent their technologies from being used by the nation's leaders to fuel insurrection. A key Republican lawmaker calling today for a new Congress to do something.
Laws haven't been updated since the 90s. They absolutely have to be. Antitrust, I know, is controversial, but you are going to see major action in this next Congress. We've got to clean this up.
Elon Musk has teased that there is more to come on Twitter's handling of COVID-19. Harris?
Well, it's no longer even a tease now. We sort of expect it. I mean, these parts are now so intertwined. There has to be something more, right? Absolutely. Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. So, as Mike's talking about, we've already seen the Twitter files drop in 4 different parts so far. The White House really dodging and even getting angry over questions in the White House press briefings.
I can't speak to decisions made by the campaign from here. That is not, it is a political campaign. Comment on the question that you're asking me. I've already addressed this multiple times this week, so I don't have anything more to add. We were not involved. I can say that. We were not involved. And as I've said several times this week already, we've had this conversation many times in this briefing room, just the past couple of days. I don't have anything more to share.
And that's as nice as it got. Tammy Bruce, Fox. Get Tammy Bruce on Fox Nation. Not that she has to be nice about it. I would be careful with the words, we haven't been involved, because she's been there for 20 minutes.
Yeah, and that certainly casts a broad net there when it comes to the government. But certainly they're done so that people can have plausible deniability when they know something's happening, perhaps that shouldn't. But my main concern here is that I think it's very important for everyone watching this show and for to not think that this is just some kind of small, unique, weird little thing in social media. This is a giant issue, and it affects everything. This is just the one that we, because a private citizen who happens to have the money, who happened to be interested, who happens to care about free speech, thought it was important when it comes to free speech in general in the country and around the world. From that worker at that forum that you quoted, saying this is
the message board.
The message board that this is wrong. This is a bad idea. Couldn't have been more right. And you don't need to be a conservative to understand that. That is the basis of what classical liberalism was about. And so this is a shocking strike at the nature of what's happening, and because government involvement with this company implementing this.
Real quickly, a Democrat walking out. Must be more people behind the scenes who can see this. But why wait all this time for Democrats to even peek into this? Is it because they can't help themselves? The evidence is all over the place.
Yes, I think the tide is turning. People like the strong horse. People want to be with...
Where is the tide going, by the way?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you something. This is going to be up to the American people. Thank God, literally, for Elon Musk, because without him, keep in mind, all of this would still be continuing. Where have the Republicans been?
So
where has the establishment been saying, wait, this is wrong? They all fell into it, either through silence or through participation.
I realize he's the richest dude on the planet right now, but do we need to crowdfund to help Elon Musk buy some of the other so we can know what's happening at Facebook and Google search and search blacklist for some of the allegations and evidence that has been found along the way by multiple journalists?
Yes, this is what Congress though should be doing. This is you know, I don't know, certainly unconstitutional. This is what Congress should say. Enough is enough. They have to take a stand, or it will never end.
Okay, funny you say that, because we're getting a clear warning from the House Oversight Committee Comer that he is writing about in an op-ed called "Get Ready for Republican Oversight." So just what you're talking about. And on the list of top is the border and fentanyl crises, pandemic relief fraud, Afghanistan withdrawal, energy crisis, COVID origins, and getting to the bottom of the Biden family's business schemes allegedly ushered in by Hunter.
They knew that laptop was legitimate. They knew it was authentic, but yet they worked closely with social media platforms to discredit the story, to make up and say it was Russian disinformation. There's a complete lack of confidence in Congress with our intelligence community. They make too many mistakes, and now we just don't trust them. So we're going to bring them in, and they're going to have an opportunity to explain themselves.
Just real quickly, this all ties together with what we're talking about with Twitter, because the Hunter Biden story was suppressed there. The New York Russian disinformation narrative around Hunter Biden's laptop will be front and center in the probe. And the New York Post cover this morning, eyes on the spies. House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy promises accountability.
Those 51 intel agents that signed a letter that said the Hunter Biden information was all wrong, was Russia collusion. Many of them have a security clearance. Why did they sign it? Brennan, why did you use the reputation that America was able to give to you, more information, but use it for a political purpose and lie to the American public?
Where are all people on the left who would say this hurts everybody? This is a damage to free speech everywhere. And oh, by the way, if there's a connection between shady business dealings in the White House through the son of the president, we all should want to know. And oh, by the way, if there's a connection between shady business dealings in the White House through the son of the president, we all should want to know.
That would be a natural, normal thing that you normally would have heard if this was the 60s or the 70s, everyone coming together yelling for this. But it's dangerous now. If you actually kind of say, wait a minute, right, this is not right, going to be shunned, or you're not going to get this next contract. So I would argue that even though we're not hearing voices, that the majority in polls show that the majority of people think all of this was wrong and should not have happened. But I would also caution things there to look at, because it's all been a disaster, that you can get lost in the weeds. Nothing matters if speech is controlled and the government is involved in that control. They've got to be able to focus and have things happen. We don't want just reality television for the next 2 years. We want results and action.
Well, we've had a lot of that.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, and it's time to just get to the nitty-gritty now.
Right.
The Washington Post reporting on a big gathering of Biden family members and allies last September. They allegedly strategized against any investigations into the first son. It included research on potential witnesses against Hunter Biden, including his former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, and laptop repairman John Paul Mac Isaac. In an op-ed, Jonathan Turley goes after that piece, writing, "What's most interesting about the piece is why the Washington Post was given such access and such a detailed account. Generally, political operatives lay out scorched earth campaign to be public before the House can call any witnesses. For key witnesses like Bobulinski, the message is about as subtle as 2x4 to the head."
That's how it works. It's